What's going on? The Walk podcast, powered by Model Match. Let's go. Casey Cunningham. Oh boy, this was a good one. I really enjoyed this one. We could have spoken I could have spoken to her for a long, long time. I'm not sure how much time Casey had to give me, but we appreciate the time that she did give. If you're in the industry, you already know who Casey Cunningham is, and you know who Zenix is. She started and leads, along with her team, the most highly recognized sales and leadership academy in our industry. If you're not in the industry, you still ought to know who she is. Google her. Check out all the awards that she's won in her hometown of Atlanta. Across our industry. It's such a wealth of knowledge and things that she's taken away and that she can share from her experiences with leaders across the industry and how they've managed various business cycles and ups and downs. This was just a good one. We talked about culture, leadership. We talked about managing through difficulties. We also talked about call signs and where hers came from. Check it out. This is a good one. Thanks for joining us on The Walk. First of all, Casey, thanks for jumping on today. I know you're super busy. We're all always busy. I kind of don't like saying that we're busy. That sounds like a cop out to a lot of other things.
We're all busy now. I know
but we are, and I respect your schedule, and I appreciate you grabbing some time today. Let's jump right in. I know your nickname is Blade.
Yep.
I do want to ask about the nicknames at Zenix and where that came from. With your nickname being Blade, I think that's because you cut right to the point. So let's get to the first question. Okay. Even though this isn't an interview, you and I are just talking.
Sure.
Where did the nicknames come from? Where'd that start? How did it evolve?
Sometimes things happen and you don't even know why. My husband's ex-Air Force, right? He had a call sign, and we were at dinner one day with our best man of our wedding, and he's a cut up. I mean, we just love him and his wife, and just, again, best friends. And I don't know, something I said just generated, he goes, "You should be called Blade. That's what I'm calling you." And so somehow I get a call sign from him. Now he's ex-military as well. So both my husband and he flew in the Air Force together. And so they're best buddies. And I'm like, oh, all right. So he would start calling me Blade all the time. I'm like, you're such a jerk in a fun way.
Is this pre-Zenix?
This is pre-Zenix.
Okay.
Pre-Zenix. He gave me the name Blade. And my husband, I never could find him. And one day I go, "I'm going to call you Stealth because you're like always under the radar. I don't know where you are." And then something happened where prior to opening Zenix, I was in a mortgage company, and I named all the rooms because my husband, again, told me I should have been in the military. He said, "You're so disciplined." And anyway, so I named the rooms Miramar, Paris Island. He's like, "Oh my God, you're mixing up the military. I can't stand it," right? Because he's Air Force.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but the whole intent is to show that there's a disciplined approach in the military that helps us win wars and is why we have our freedom. And so when I opened Zenix, I already had my call sign, and I was like, we need to give everybody call signs. And so we call them call signs, not nicknames, because of our honor to the military, and we model all of our training after the aviation world because planes don't crash, right? You actually get thoroughly trained to become a pilot. So we've modeled the way in which aviation has trained their pilots to train loan officers and leaders and ops today. So
got it. So one more question on the call signs.
Oh yeah.
If I become part of Zenix, or Thomas becomes part of Zenix, how do I get my call sign? Do you choose the call sign? Is there a committee that chooses the call sign? How do we come up with the call sign?
Well, part of the rules of the military, by the way, on call signs, we adopted those, but we sort of changed it. So in the military, there's 3 rules. It must be short, it must apply, and you must hate it. And so they give it to you. Okay, so that's why you normally see these horrible call signs by these guys.
Right.
Well, at Zenix, we shifted number 3. So
that's
the 3 again, it must be short, it must apply, and you must be cool.
Okay.
So we like that the call sign always has something to do with either your personality or your likes or your position. For example, my head of marketing, right? It's short, it applies. It's short, it applies, and it's cool. And she's Skywriter, right? So she's writing about Zenix on a daily basis. So I have everything from eagle because he soars on a daily basis to I have, oh my gosh, go down the list, bullseye because he does archery, but he's always on point.
Do you wait? Like, is there I got to figure how, like, you got to be here for a month. I got to figure out your nuances and then you get the call sign.
Sometimes we've had some that will take as much as 3 months, but almost within a week to a month, we get to know the personality. Everybody sort of helps vote. We do a formal, I call it a formal process, 2 formal processes. One, it's time to vote. Everybody throw out a name that you like for so-and-so, because now we get to know the personalities. And then the team sort of collectively goes, we like this one works. I get the final vote. We never replicate a call sign. So if somebody ever leaves Zenix, that call sign is retired. And I get the final vote. So
percentage.
I give an X, like we do a formal ceremony.
You check the box. Has it happened where somebody comes to you a week later and knocks on Casey's office door and says, hey, I really need to talk to you? And you think it's that moment where you see their body language and maybe they're giving you a 2-week notice. I mean, we've seen that body language before.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But they sit down and they say, Casey, you got to change my call sign. I can't stand it. Does that happen?
Never. No, because we won't give it to them if they don't love it.
Okay, so they have to sign off on it before it becomes official also. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
And we do a real formal ceremony. It's sort of funny. I had this X made out of the silver. It's really the coolest thing. And so when we all have agreed and they think it's cool and they love it, then we do a formal ceremony with an X on their shoulders. It's hysterical. They don't know it's coming. And they look like we're about to chop their head off because it's an X. And I'm like, right. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. So we have pictures, and if you ever go on our social, you can see it. But
I think I've seen that X, actually. That's a great story. I love that. Something I know you've been doing a lot recently is you've been interviewing leadership in the industry and grabbing 10 minutes, 20 minutes. One of the topics that you typically open up with is, how are you doing right now? How are you adjusting to things right now? I want to ask that question of you and Zenix, but I'd like to ask it less maybe about, and maybe this is impossible right now, but pre-COVID, we were already in a low interest rate environment. Right. Volume was going through the roof. It was good times, but even in good times, companies are having to adjust to those times and think ahead relative to lots of things, including capacity. I'm curious, number one, how Zenix has evolved and adjusted over the last couple of months. I'm also curious if there's a common theme that you're hearing from those leaders that you're having an opportunity to spend time with.
Yeah, I'm so blessed by those interviews, right? Because
before,
you know the drill, sort of like you and I, right? Before we went live, you asked me some very personal questions. And so I've gotten some real personal time with these leaders to really hear what's going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So it's been a real privilege for sure. My initial goal there was really to bring an awareness to the industry of the magnitude of decisions being made. Because the minute you start pointing and I'm going to say you're at the bottom, if you will, bottom being you're on the street level and you're constantly pointing, can you believe what they are doing? Right. It doesn't serve well for any organization, especially for our industry as a whole. And so if I could bring an appreciation for the magnitude of these major decisions they're making to salvage their companies, to salvage our industry, and to help consumers long-term, then I think I can win. So that was the intent of where I started. Now I'm getting to know these human beings at a whole different level because of my wonderful conversations. But What I have done, to answer your question directly, what I've done over the past 2 months is probably no different than what all the executives, right? Over communicate, get your team together. We responded to the market. I had been through 2008. And so I understood a shift in market conditions that's radical, that could determine the future of the viability of my business. And in 2008, I was on my knees, right, with the rest of the industry going, okay, because very different circumstances here. It's raining business, but regs are changing so fast and these margin calls are hitting them, and it came out of nowhere. So now they had capital and they're worried about the sustainability of just going through this entire infrastructure shift, if you will. 2008, there was no money and there was no business, so it was totally different. But because I'd been a wartime CEO I'm calling it wartime in 2008 because I survived it. When this happened, maybe it prepared me for when this happened because my services. Do you really need training to help people be better performers when business is coming in? It's so fast that they need to slow it down. And so I pulled my team together right away and said, okay. And I was a little fortunate that it was about 2 weeks before this whole shutdown happened that I started taking action. And I was blessed, man. I was with a CEO when the market hit. And when he told me I had $20 million in runoffs in one day, I called an emergency meeting with my leadership team and said, okay, we're about to hit a market conditions that are not favorable for our business model. But I think it is. People won't know that. And we have to go at it with a different angle, where we've always talked about how to be a better performer and how to help leaders become better and salespeople become better. We had not angled it with, hey, we can help staff your company. So we already had the programs and services, but we had to change our marketing angle immediately to say, we can help you with your capacity challenges. And so my team responded like overnight. I have got the most amazing team. And when I told them the challenge is, we need to shift the way in which we communicate to the market to let them know we're a part of their solution, that they need us. You can train a processor in 10 days, literally 10 working days. I can take somebody who knows nothing in our business and make them competent in Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and VA. And they, at the end of 10 working days, and I could do it remotely. And in this market, that's what everybody was needing. And so most people didn't know we could do that. And then for salespeople, how we could build them. So we've been really blessed. We got the word out immediately that, hey, don't put us in the bucket of just getting your LOs better and your leaders better. We can help equip and staff your team. So they responded incredibly well. I was really blessed with that insight and the gift to be able to come up with an angle that I knew the industry would need to hear. And so I have been shocked at how responsive the industry has been, because they would all countlessly say, I didn't know that. I didn't know you could do that. I'll be right back.
Right.
And so we have been really, really blessed. We're up by, I think, almost 100% on our new LO programs, where people are like, hey, let's bring them in. So anyway.
When you say new LO programs, are those rookie LO programs or?
Rookies, rookie LOs, rookie LOAs, like brand new assistants, brand new LOs. We also are for brand new processors, so ops, sales support, setup. So yeah, been really
good for you. And obviously a somewhat obvious sign of a good leader and CEO is to recognize the environment that you're in and figure out where can you take advantage of that environment. There's always a spot. The hard part is removing yourself. You know, we were talking earlier about essentially emotion, fear, and panic in the environment that we're in today. And if you allow that environment to you know, I think fear is okay. Fear drives you a little bit to go recognize the environment and find the opportunity. Panic is a totally different story, though, and you start to make bad decisions. Clearly, with what you're seeing with the leaders that you communicate with, as well as yourself, that's one of the common threads, I'm sure, for who are the ones that are going to be successful on a go-for basis. You know, it also, you and I've talked before about the 8 levers of employee engagement that you coach around, that you've written about, leadership being such a big part of it. You were talking about communication. Generally, people follow people and people leave people. They don't always expect you to make the right decision all the time, but they are going to follow you once they've developed that trust and you communicate effectively. How do you coach around the big buzzword and all of that that's so easy to say and really hard to make tangible, and that is culture? How do you build an environment where the culture is tangible, and how do you coach the companies you work with to think about how to pull that off?
You know, I've learned a lot over the years through all of my mistakes. So this is not coming from my wisdom is all through errors in judgment previously, right? So unfortunately, sometimes you can try to share it and they don't always hear it, but at one point you will.
Well, failure is part of the process, right?
Yeah, it is part of the process. So my number one, culture, man. Whew. Yeah, it begins with you as the executive leader, but it also begins with the leaders you choose. I have not always made the right selection on a leader thinking they were who I thought they were, if you will. That I'm more passionate about than ever. So the first is really picking and equipping your leadership team. That is an area of real challenge in our industry. Most people don't prioritize the leadership. right? You think about it. The sales guy becomes a manager and he's never been taught how to even manage a human being, and he knows how to manage his own pipeline, but not a person. And so that is, I'm on a real passion and mission to help our industry to really advance the priorities of building their leaders. Because once you build the leaders, the rest falls right in alignment. So your culture is built on not just you, but the leaders that you put around you. So I'm very intentional about the culture, but hey, I've been in business now 18 years. When I first started, it was about just let's get the bills paid, right? I got to get computers on desk. I got to get things done, and didn't prioritize it at the level I have. I mean, it's my number one priority, because I believe a healthy culture drives a healthy business. And quite frankly, I want people to work in an organization like I would want to work on, that loves and values people, prioritizes, is transparent, brings focus to you every day, gives you appreciation and recognition for who you are and what you do, and also understands that there's the humanity part, right? I've got people with real problems, with real life challenges of parents dying, parents sick, babies at home. And listen, I have just grown over the years, because I just remember the old Casey when I first became a leader. It was all about me. I mean, it's like, what am I doing? Now it's all about them. And so I think leadership really evolves, and cultures are created when you realize that as a leader, you're really at the bottom, serving everybody else. And I remember a cool lesson that a leader gave me one day. And he said, your number one job as a leader is to take away every single barrier that your people have in front of them to get their jobs done effectively. If it's the fax machine's going to make their life better, then get them a fax machine. Boy, I'm aging myself, right? Fax machine. Do you even know what a fax machine is?
Yes, I do, Casey.
Okay. So, but I keep remembering that, going, if it makes, a better printer is going to make them more effective, then get them a better printer. And if letting them off 2 hours early on Friday lets them beat traffic, then my gosh. So I have flex hours at the company. I mean, I do a lot of things that are very intentional to build our culture. And, we've won, I don't know, 20 plus culture awards. And I'm going to say we, because I didn't win it. My team, my leaders did. Right. So the employees of Xenix, we call them associates. The associates of Xenix actually vote and get to submit what they think about the culture. And every time we win, I'm just like, I told my team, I said, we should never take for granted when we get a win, like, oh, we got another one. It's like, man, that's significant, because I want to preserve this special culture that we have. And
That's a big one, because you figured out a way to turn the intangible into a tangible. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten, and I think that most in our group have heard me say this before, when I was younger and kind of getting started, I just wanted to be the top producer. That's all I cared. All I cared about was the number. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you into submission. I'm going to laugh at you in hot sheet meetings. Whatever you put up there is a joke.
You and I could have gone up against each other, because I'd have chest bumped you. Said, bring it.
Oh no, we would have beaten each other to death, and then we would have teamed up, and it would have been great. But one day the CEO of that company walked into my office after a hot sheet meeting, and he poked his head in. Now, of course, I think I'm untouchable, right? I'm driving all the revenue. You can't complain to me about anything. He poked his head and he said, you need to learn something real quick. I said, what is that? He said, not everybody is like you. And he and it wasn't a positive. He wasn't saying this as a compliment at all.
Right. I know what you mean.
At the time, I wasn't managing. I wasn't growing a business. I had my own book of business.
Sure.
It was the best advice I've ever gotten. I was mad at him when he said it, and I'll never forget it. And I think that's part of what you're talking about, is you have to fail personally to then figure out how do you fit into this formula as a leader to support positive culture. That makes me think of something else. So our business, maybe we're not the only industry like this, but It's a little upside down. The funnel gets turned back and forth a lot. You have a CEO of a company that runs the company, but in reality, there is no company if the originators aren't driving revenue, if they're not driving volume. With thinking about leaders again, where people follow people and people leave people, and culture and how that fits in. I talk to people all the time, loan officers, that are not happy about where they're priced in the market. They're not happy about a product that just got pulled. They're not happy about some capacity issue that they're having locally, or a process or underwriter that's no longer sitting next to them, but they're not leaving the company.
Sure.
Because they trust that leader, and that communicator does such a good job. This sounds like a strange story.
Oh, that's my puppy.
Say hello to your puppy. Hold your puppy. Put your puppy in the frame. There you go. Okay. What's up, Charlie?
You see somebody
when
walking by, stop that. You
when
can't.
you're bringing, Charlie doesn't like me. Look at that.
No, no, there's somebody walking by the house. They're not
Okay,
allowed
thank
to.
you.
It's
That
our
makes me feel
house, he
better.
said.
That
So
makes me feel better. Good. Protect mama, Charlie. When you're training rookies, originators, do you ever think a little bit about how that rookie originator can maybe change I'm careful how I say this, but change the dynamic a little bit of the industry? And here's what I mean. We have those moments where we want loan officers to pump the brakes for the good of the industry and the good of the company. And it's the right thing to do. But if you're compensating an originator 100% commission, specifically off the loans that they're closing, we're motivating them strangely to just focus on filling that funnel as much as they possibly can. I'd love your thoughts. I mean, whether the industry is going to change and go in a direction, I'm not asking you that. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that dynamic.
well, that model is not working, and the profitability is challenged in our industry on that model. I have a new model that I want to bring to the industry that I think is going to be a radical shift for the way they think, but it'll also create the profitability and performance, because you're right. There's no way, if you're going to compensate me primarily on my production, that I'm going to focus on building others and recruiting into a branch. You can threaten me, you can beat me up, you can tell me that's your highest priority, but if I have to feed my family and the majority of my comp is coming from my performance in my pipeline, then I have to focus on where I get compensated. So I think there's a better model. I truly believe that the loan officer of the future will not be a producing manager if I have anything to do with it. And I think the industry at large, the reason they do that is because they don't know what else to do. And the model doesn't allow them to, right? That loan officer who's like, I want to be a manager. And, you know, why? Because people want to have progress. We all want to grow as human beings. You don't want to stay stagnant. And the next logical step after I'm a salesperson is I become a sales manager. Which, by the way, that's not bad. Absolutely make them a sales manager. But that next place, a branch manager doesn't allow you to produce, because you've equipped them and you have a business model that shares exactly what the branch manager should do. And you actually teach them and guide them and give them what I call a legitimate roadmap to leading others. Today, it's the model is, I don't want to hire a manager because I can't be profitable. And I'm thinking, okay, so you're stuck. And they are stuck. So I think there's a much better play. And our industry, I actually, interesting enough, just submitted to the MBA a topic to present at the conference, assuming we have one, that's really all about the new way of thinking about it. I brought it to my advisory board. So I have a group of advisory board leaders from around the country that represent small, medium, and large mortgage banks, credit unions, independents, if you will. And they advised me. So I brought it to them and said, here's the new model. What do you think? And you could hear this pause, and they went, wow, haven't thought of it in that terms. I said, would it make you more profitable? They said, oh, absolutely. And I said, but the problem is the roadmap's not been out there for them to do that. So that's what I'm hoping to bring, is that roadmap, so I can help this industry, because I love this industry. I've been in it for 30, I don't know, I'm age myself big time, 36 years.
Well, I love that commentary. You know, the companies that we support strategic growth, retail, wholesale, correspondent. So we see this a lot, right? We see this a lot where you get hung up on, we're only going to hire this person if they can influence people out of the gate. How many people are going to follow them in the first 30 days? And you're right away starting in a very difficult spot to then manage a lot of other things: onboarding, acclimation, retention for the long term. You know, when you're recruiting and you're hiring, you're not just recruiting. That process, when it starts, it relates to your long-term retention as well. I know you know this. Don't disagree with you all on the manager side. I love that you're doing that. That's exciting. I'm also curious how you think that model relates even to the originator. What about the originator? Do you see an environment or an opportunity where that comp model maybe changes over time, and it's not strictly 100% commission, which then allows us to maybe do a better job of motivating them towards other things and not only as many applications as you can jam into the system at the same time?
I don't see it shifting anytime soon. You think about it, who's going to do it first?
That's always the question, right? You better. Right. I asked the CEO this, Casey, not that long ago, and not to interrupt you, but I want to throw this out at you. similar conversations you're having. I'm talking to a CEO of a pretty large retail originator, and his comment to me was, Eric, you have no idea how many LOs are emailing me daily saying, do you have any idea how much money you just cost me? But the reason my feeling is the reason that's happening is because they're sometimes motivated in the wrong direction. It's not helpful to what you're trying to do in running the business. So that's one of the reasons why I asked the question, Casey.
Well, I think what's going to happen is there are some, well, I'll call them renegades is a good description, where their model allows them to not follow the traditional retail model. And they are building a whole different business structure to where their comp is a really decent base, plus obviously not near as much in basis points in commission, but their model gives security to that LO and allows the company to perform at a much higher profitability margin. Their model, I believe, is the future, because the independents are going to struggle with the comp models that we currently have. I'm hoping that we can help them radically when they see this new model that we're going to be sharing. But I do think these renegades have got something.
They have the opportunity to start to create the spark. And I'm with you with what you said.
And they're building them from scratch. That's what you got to know, Eric. They're building them from scratch. Mm-hmm. So they're not saying, let me go hire the traditional LO who likes the higher comp for obvious reasons. We all do.
Right.
But they're not captured and stuck with that.
Right.
And so they are figuring it out. You know what? I don't want the traditional LO. I'm going to build a new traditional LO, even though they don't call it that. And so I think they're onto something, and I think we're going to see more gravitate to that direction.
I appreciate that. And to your point earlier, if you're a legacy mortgage company right now, who does it first? Because whoever does it first, you're 80% of your sales force is getting wiped out the next day, and you just hope others fall in line, and then you get some of those back, which is why it's not going to happen. But I'm going to close out with one more question, and then I hope down the road you and I can do this again, because there's a lot more that we could talk about.
Sure.
I saw one of your posts where you recently started a prayer board at the company.
Yeah.
Great idea. I'd like to know what you learned from the prayer board. I'd like to know if you learned things about people that surprised you a little bit. Maybe obviously keep names out, but I'd love to hear what you learned and maybe some stories from that.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I'm gonna try not to cry when I'm talking because I'm a big crybaby. So I started it early on during this pandemic because I had this feeling, because I, doing what all the other leaders are doing, Zoom meetings, and everybody's lined up on the screen. And I started to just feel this heaviness that was happening, not for me, but for my team, if that makes any sense. Because, I'm blessed beyond measure. Literally, I'm, locked up in a home that's beautiful, and I have a beautiful family, and everybody's healthy, and I don't have any of the distractions or challenges that many do. And I could feel this heaviness, and started just reaching out privately to some of my employees just to say, how you doing? What's going on? And one of them cried on my shoulder, for all intents and purposes, cried as we were just sharing this challenge of homeschooling, right? It's like, oh, I've got an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, soon to be, she'll be 14 in a few weeks. And I just felt like, oh my gosh. And I was struggling on homeschooling, and I'm pretty organized and all that, but trying to balance it all is really just, it's just part of life. But the way I was doing it and the way I was handling it and the way she was handling it were different. And she was really struggling. Now she started crying, and I just went, oh my God. I had no idea if I hadn't reached out to her. Like, she's not going to just call me and go, hey, I need to talk to you so I can cry on somebody's shoulder. And so I did some reach outs, and realized that, man, we're a company of faith. Everybody that works there knows my faith. They know how important it is. And some may not be faithful, or, I don't require them. And I talked to the leadership team, which they typically, I'll say they typically support me when I say, hey, let's start a prayer board. And I just opened it up to the company. And I told all of them, I said, you know what, we're in a difficult time in our country. Some of you are having more difficult times than others in your families, and I don't know that part, and you don't have to share it, but we want to pray for you. And for all of those that are in my prayer circle that wants to pray for you, if you would be willing to share and just put it on the board, you don't even have to tell us, but I'm gonna open it up right now. And literally they just started sharing. I was shocked, to be frank. I mean, I say shocked, pleasantly surprised that they would open their hearts and really share what they were struggling with. So I typed it up after hearing it. All the leaders, I'm like, did y'all capture all that? Because we're all on camera. And I typed it up, showed the leaders that I'd created a prayer board, and said, let's now put that out there for everybody that wants to pray for them and that anybody wants to add to the board. I learned that one family member, besides the homeschooling, one family member was struggling intensely with a sick family member in the hospital and they couldn't go see him. Mm-hmm. Another one, very worried about their child because they were at a distance. I worry, I could go on and on, but just the fear of the unknown is what I could feel on the team. Right. So I'm doing a lot of things to help. Like I meet with my team every Wednesday and Friday, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I was doing every day of the week during the pandemic. I just shifted it to now an hour on Monday for the whole team on Wednesdays and Fridays. And so last Friday, I talk about the prayer board, shifting over slightly, is that last Friday I said, oh, hey, everybody, I know we have our standard meeting at noon, so it's called 12 at 12, 12 minutes at 12 o'clock on Wednesdays and Fridays. I said, today's 12 minutes are going to be a little different. What do each of you do to manage through either fear or anxiety? And what encouraging words do you have for each other? Again, I was so shocked. They all started, here's what I do. Here's how I handle it. Here's a verse in the Bible that I read on a consistent basis. And it was one associate after another, just pouring into the others. And so they know my faith. You know, the prayer board was an easy thing for me, but actually making it a reality, I brought it out to the market because I really felt like people might need, you know, we're all talking about over communicating all the time, right? Every leader, by the way, I've spoken to says, what have you done during the pandemic? They go, I am communicating like crazy, which I'm hoping that everybody that's listening, that's not communicating, because I have some managers that said, oh, I haven't even met with my team. I'm like, what? Right? So anyway, I like to provide, and which hopefully differentiates us as a learning company, right? And as people, is that we give the tactics of how. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to lead with.
It's so great. It's this idea of feeling compelled. I think as maybe we mature a little bit and we've got enough body of evidence, we realize that when we're compelled, maybe we should actually do it. You were clearly compelled to do something that created value for the team there, which then put you in a position to recognize your own environment and find ways to manage that environment. Casey, I appreciate you coming on today. This was better than I could have even hoped it would be. The industry's lucky to have you. Clearly you're a great leader. This conversation proves what a great human being you are. If there's anything I can ever do for you, I hope you'll ask. And until then, thank you for coming on the walk with me.
Well, thank you for having me. What a great walk it was. You are awesome. I love that you want to bring back value to the industry as well. So thank you for your time today.
We're trying. I appreciate you, Casey.
God bless you, man. Okay. Take care.